VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
Well, thank you, Mr. Morris, and good to have you with us on Crosstalk today. Picking up on yesterday's program, we talked about a publication that lists, many people are saying the religion of peace certainly has nothing to fear. And yet, as we look at the Holy Book, that is the Bible of Islam, we discover that there are some very harsh indications of what many have branded as violence, if not death, the execution, the beheading, and the war, jihad, which is holy war, and the destruction of those who are against Islam. At any rate, we mentioned it on the air, and so far, I think there's been requests over 300 of the little 20-page booklets, and they're still available. I don't want to keep pushing that, but I do know this is a very important document. Many of you listening today have heard a lot about Islam. We've heard many political speeches, pro and con, and we understand, of course, that there is a mark of violence in some regions of Islam. But the question is, what does Islam believe? What does it teach? What are what's the content of the Islamic Bible? And just for starters, we have 20 pages where the Islamic Quran has been translated into plain English. Now, this is not softening the words. This is not sugarcoating them, but literally making them very clear as taken direct translation from Arabic to English. As you read it, you'll even find some of the awkward phraseology, but it comes from direct translation. At any rate, we've had over 300 requests just over yesterday and today. And if you're interested, simply call. It's something worth reading, having. So you cannot say that you understand Islam unless you know what it says. This would be a good thing to give to your pastor and your youth director, to your city government, your people. You see, the question is this: would a facility in a city be acceptable if they advocated the beheading of non-believers? I mean, it's more than a religion. It is now a way of life. And beheading has been demonstrated in numerous areas, even to this United States, where a businessman beheaded his own wife because she didn't honor him. Now, these are frightening things. Talk about the man that was on the Greyhound bus and stabbed the man sitting next to him, a total stranger. And when the passengers jumped off and kept the perpetrator in the bus, the man beheaded his victim and held the head up to the window. Now, this is bizarre and terrible stuff, and normally I don't like to talk about it, but our world is in a mess, and we have to understand that some of these austere religions have some codes of ethics that are very violent. And even according to the verses that I shared with you yesterday, Muhammad says in the Quran that he does not believe in changing, that the policies of Allah remain and they are not changeable. Well, you can get your own copy of those verses, about probably 90 verses totally. In this 20-page document, we've copied them, made them available to you. And the price for one is $3. That covers postage. The price for 3 is $7. The price for 5 is $12. But if you'd like to, we're just mentioning it today. From this point on, we're not going to be saying a lot about it. But if you are interested in obtaining this and sharing it with your friends who do not know what Islam teaches and what the Quran says, and what is the Quran, we've seen people dying over an issue of the burning of a couple of Qurans in Afghanistan, and the president of this nation apologizing for the burning of a couple of Qurans. Soldiers have died. People have been dying in the streets and riots carrying on, all as a result of this. Now, what would happen if Christians behaved this way? If when our Bible is desecrated, even as it was when copies of the Bible were in Afghanistan were taken from our soldiers and burned by our government. What would happen if Christians behaved that way? But instead, we're making apologies for a violent religion, in my opinion, and it seems to be something of deep, deep concern, should be, to all of us. Now, I'm not one of these guys that goes around believing all the conspiracy stuff. It's easy to do that. And there seems to be a lot of evidence coming forth and people talking about one conspiracy after another. But what I've got to talk to you about today is not conspiracy or theory. It's fact. First of all, I'm going to begin with a letter written by the ACLU. It's a public letter. It's out there. But the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union of Southern California. Now, may I say this, 90% of the time, 95% of the time, I will disagree with whatever the ACLU is talking about because they demand the separation of church and state, and they're involved in all kinds of, anybody even hints to be reverential regarding things of faith, they will raise up a complaint. But I want to read this to you because this is a letter written August 26th, 2010, to Sheriff Leroy Baca, B-A-C-A, Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, Monterey Park, California. Dear Sheriff Baca, we write to you as concerned citizens as well as class counsel for the almost 20,000 pretrial detainees and sentenced prisoners in the Los Angeles County jails to protest your decision to install in the jails an assault intervention device, an invisible heat beam weapon originally developed by the U.S. military as a way to subdue demonstrators by focusing a microwave beam on them to make them feel intolerable heat. In plain language, burns. You claimed at your press conference on Friday, August the 20th, that the assault intervention device appears uniquely suited to address some of the more difficult inmate violent issues, since it will allow us to quickly intervene without having to enter the area and without incapacitating or injuring either combatant. Your great confidence in the safety of this device seems to us seriously misplaced. As you're aware, the military incarnation of this device, called the Active Denial System, or the ADS, was briefly fielded in Afghanistan in June, then withdrawn in July without ever being used. The military version can be mounted on a truck and was intended to be used against protesters outside of the American embassy bases, or military bases. While the device was being tested by the Air Force, a miscalibration of the device's power settings caused 5 airmen in its path to suffer lasting burns, including one of those injuries so severe that he was airlifted to an off-base burn treatment center. According to a 2008 report by physicist and lethal weapons expert Dr. Jürgen Altman, the ADS provides the technical possibility to produce burns of second and third degree over considerable parts of the body, up to 50% of its surface. And without a technical device that is reliably preventing re-triggering on the same target subject, the ADS has the potential to produce permanent injury or death. As the report also points out, the possibility of re-triggering the same target subject puts avoidance of burns at the discretion of the weapons operator. We strongly oppose the view that it has ever been appropriate to deploy against the detainees of a county jail or any other incarcerated population a military weapon intended to cause intolerable pain and capable of causing severe injury or death. We believe the employment of such weapons in this context creates a wholly unjustified risk that detainees will be needlessly subjected to excessive force, indeed a force tantamount to torture, in violation of the Eighth Amendment, basic human rights norms, and international law. It is all the more troubling to us that the use of the device is being entrusted to the deputies of the L.A. County Jail, where the ACLU, in its role as a court-appointed monitor on the Rutherford litigation, has documented the long and troubling history of deputy violence, retaliation, and abuse against pre-trial detainees and sentenced prisoners. Now, this is a letter from the ACLU. Those words, pre-trial detainees, people that are put in jail until they are going to be tried, whether they're guilty or not. Now you say, what in the world is this machine? Well, let me just say this. All you have to do is to go to Wikipedia, and you'll find that this is absolutely true. It is a weapon that was designed. It's been under study for some times. But the active denial system, this is from Wikipedia now, is a non-lethal direct energy weapon developed by the U.S. military. It is a strong multi-wave wave transmitter, primarily used for crowd control. Some ADS, such as, and they mention the HPEM ADS, also are used to disable vehicles, just aiming it at the vehicle, shut it down. Informally, the weapon is also called the heat ray. Raytheon, that's the manufacturer, is currently marketing a reduced-range version of this technology. The ADS was deployed in 2010 with the United States military in the Afghanistan war, but was withdrawn without seeing combat. And on August 20th, 2010, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department announced its intent to use the technology on prisoners in the Pitchless Detention Center in Los Angeles, stating its intended use to use it in operational evaluation. The ADS is currently a vehicle-mounted weapon, though U.S. Marines and police are both working on a portable version. Now, the story goes on. It describes this in technical words, but to reduce it to the kind of stuff that you and I can understand, this beam is generated the equivalent of 2.5 million watts of power. It is a signal that is known as 95 gigahertz, which is an extremely high wavelength. It's about the same wavelength as is used in the dealing with food in the microwave oven. Now, let me just say this, breaking into this discussion with something that we as broadcasters always have to be careful of. There are federal laws that prohibit us from allowing anybody to climb our towers because of the possibility of radiation until that power is reduced. Radiation is a powerful thing. That's why I can talk to you at this moment. But it can also be very lethal. Your microwave oven is an example. We'll be back in a moment. This is Crosstalk.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, creation researcher with ICR.
Dr. Morris, how can we tell what kind of diet dinosaurs had?
Chris, we can get an estimate of this by looking at dinosaur teeth and from the very few that have been found mummified. Also, when we find dinosaur dung through microscopic analysis, we can see what kind of food it ate. This is all good science. But when we find a plant fossil near a dinosaur fossil, does that mean the dinosaur ate that kind of plant? In reality, what you have is not a life environment, but a burial environment. We don't even know where these things lived or even where they died. We just know where they got buried. I think they were buried primarily by the great flood of Noah's day in the sediments laid down by moving water. Chris, when we go back to Genesis, we can start to get it right.
If you want to know more about the creation evolution issue, visit us on the web at www.icr.org. Back to Genesis is a production of the Institute for Creation Research. I'm Chris O'Brien. Thanks for tuning in.
And welcome back to Crosstalk. We're talking about this, well, it's called the active denial system. That's right. It doesn't even call it a thing. It's just a system. But it's a device that now has been at the price of $5 million, was placed, in fact, was it more than that? Was it $25 million? Yeah. $25 million on 5 vehicles that were sent to Afghanistan, and I believe they've been sent back. But the question is, what about this radiation stuff? I was mentioning that broadcasters have to be extremely careful, and in order to even be licensed broadcasters, we have to certainly stipulate and verify that anyone climbing our towers, that the transmitters must be shut down to low power, if not shut off completely. Our policy is to shut them off completely, because anyone subject to radiation has the potential of being burned or radiation occurring even in the marrow of the bones. And so it's a very serious thing. Now we're talking about a radiation system that's at a higher frequency, one that's more related to that which we use to heat our food. I'm glad you weren't in our kitchen a couple nights ago. I was a little hungry, and I stopped by the local burger place and picked up a couple of what they call Chicago-style hot dogs, with all the trimmings and the green relish and all the good stuff. Peppers, you bet. And they were wrapped in kind of a white paper with foil. And unthinkingly, I got home and I popped them in the machine because they were a little cold, and I hit the button, and in less than 2 seconds, there were sparks and fire flying around inside of that microwave oven, burnt a hole, and I just about had to put a fire out because of the radiation that happened in seconds. And I was the idiot for doing that, but I should have known better. I've put paper and foam in there, but the metal of the foil was what did the trick. And we're talking about the power of radiation. Now, this device that's been made was made for the purpose of breaking up groups of people who might be protesting or go further into riot mode or in some particular way, but controlling crowds. And the big question is, how dangerous is this? Well, we understand that there is the possibility of serious danger. A spokesman for the Air Force Research Laboratory said this, as he became a subject. For the first millisecond, that's just a half a second, it just felt like the skin was warming up. Then it got warmer, and you felt like it was on fire. As soon as you're away from the beam, your skin returns to normal, and there's no pain. But it goes on further, recognizing that they still haven't proven the possible long-term effects of this kind of radiation. And the fact that it says this, no significant effects for wearers of contact lenses or other eyewear, including night vision goggles, yet. Normal skin applications as cosmetics, they have little effect on this. But sometimes this can cause pea-sized blisters with exposures to this ray. Now, there's speculation. They say that the lethal aspect of this is controlled by the person who's running it. This 2.5 million watt high-efficiency continuous wave. Now, let me just say this. For $25 million, they put 5 of these together to handle the congregations outside of the military bases. But you'd say, well, how powerful a device is this? Is this just hocus pocus? Is this just simply talking off the cuff here about something that's theoretical? No, this is something that actually exists. And the use is, well, Wikipedia puts it this way. It's been designed as a, quote, non-lethal weapon for perimeter defense, the gap between shouting and shooting, but it's crowd control. Now, the issue, of course, is the person who regulates the time of exposure, because it can bring second and third degree burns. We've talked about that, with the potential of death. And the question is, as our administration has put this equipment into operation, and that it is now being designed for our prison system and police, one would have to say, how far would a beam like this travel? Well, from what I understand, and according to the records here, 700 meters this beam can be aimed or focused. 700 meters, that's like a third of a mile from the subject. The smaller units are less intense. I shouldn't say less intense, just smaller to carry. But the issue again, as the unit, the small one, called the Silent Guardian. It's a smaller size unit, and it's mounted to the ceiling of jail cells. Now, Raytheon, the multi-million-dollar electronics firm, says that they're making various models of this tool. You might say, well, Vic, after all, I'm not wicked, I'm not doing anything bad, or I'm not doing anything that, should bring about the use of something terrible like that on me. Well, I would hope none of us would. But do you realize that there has been also some other things happening in Congress? Some things that you may not be aware of and should be. Because there has been, get this is posted on March 3rd, 2012, by a congressional aide. It refers to a House resolution called H.R. 347. Now let me read this to you. The First Amendment to the Constitution declares that the people of the United States have the right to assemble, speak, and petition the government for redress of grievance that cannot be abridged. But with the passage of H.R. 347, the Congress has gone ahead and abridged that right, H.R. 347. It's named the Federal Restricted Buildings and Grounds Improvement Act, and it declares that whoever knowingly engages in protest near a building where the president is doing his business is guilty of a federal crime if the protest impedes or disrupts the flow of government business or official functions. Could that mean someone crying out in a public speech? Could it? Well, let's read what the bill actually says. Whoever knowingly and with the intent to impede or disrupt the orderly conduct of government business or official functions engages in disorderly or disruptive conduct in or within proximity to any restricted buildings or grounds, when or so that such conduct in fact impedes or disrupts the orderly conduct of government business or official functions, or attempts to, or conspires to do so, that's even before you do it, shall be punished as provided in subsection B. The punishment for a violation of subsection A is a fine under this title or imprisonment for not more than 10 years, or both, if the person during and in relation to the offense uses or carries a deadly or dangerous weapon or firearm, or the official result is significant bodily injury as defined by Section 2118E3, and a fine under this title or imprisonment for not more than 1 year, or both in any case. Now, no more demonstrating at presidential appearances, at least not if you don't want to be arrested. No more demonstrating even near wherever the president is, even if nobody gets hurt, even if no property is damaged, even if nobody trespasses. If you raise your voice too loud and bother the president as he goes about his business, you can be tossed into federal prison for a year. Even talk about doing such a thing can get you into prison. Now, the members of Congress who voted for H.R. 347 seems to have struck a blow against freedom of assembly, freedom of protest, and freedom of speech. And let me say, I'm not in favor of wild and woolly and out-of-control things. That's not what I'm talking about. But our Constitution does provide for freedom of assembly. I've seen that happen right here in our state of Wisconsin, as we've watched issues dealing with our governor and people who are the enemies of a conservative government have gathered together and formed their statements. But would you believe that the majority of people who voted for this, the majority of people who approved it, were the Republicans? That's right. I sometimes wonder where we're going. We have, of course, one last item, lest you're saying, well, so what? That's stuff that won't affect me. But I have here a picture of something that is called a drone. A drone, that's right. Did you know, I hope you do know, that the government has approved the use of drones. Drones that will be flying at levels unbelievable. Let me read you the article. Police agencies in the United States to begin using drones in 90 days. Coming to the skies above you soon. This is from the Watertown Daily Times. Drones, and more drones. And all giving police, and who knows who else, the chance to peek into your backyard. Legislation just signed by President Obama directs the FAA, Federal Aviation, to open the skies to remotely controlled drones within the next 3 years. It will begin in 90 days with the police and first responders having authority to fly smaller drones of no less than 4.4 pounds at altitudes under 400 feet. Gradually, all the drones are to be allowed by September 30th, 2015. The use of drones has been restricted out of civilian aviation safety concerns created by a sky full of drones flown by untrained operators in the same airspace. But that was overridden by successful lobbying of the drone makers and customers who will reap the financial benefits for commercial purposes. The market for drones is valued at $5.9 billion and is expected to double in the next decade. This report from the New York Times. And so, they can be used by real estate agents to snap aerial pictures, but given the cost and the ease of use, what will stop a member of the paparazzi or any other prying photographer from using them to get personal? Well, the other day, the Times said a $300 drone can be thrown from an iPhone. Well, that's true, because I was at the shopping center the other day and I saw a little miniature drone helicopter. Seriously. Has a video camera on it and can take pictures of the neighbor's backyard. But now they're coming up with the label police on them. Was Orwell right when he said Big Brother is watching over you? We're going to open our phone lines for a chat today. Our phone number, 800-733-9829.
Gossip. It's a device Satan has used to fracture families, harm relationships, and divide churches. Yet in our present day, gossip spreads like wildfire through dry timberland. The Scripture tells us that God hates a false witness that speaketh lies, and he that soweth discord among brethren. Now in handy booklet form, Pastor Kelly Sensenake has written a powerful expose on gossip. He writes about the origin of gossip, how to detect gossip, the design of gossip, how to respond to gossip, and the tragic effects of gossip. He also presents a solid biblical approach to the cure for gossip and how to have victory over it. It's a powerful 54-page booklet that every Christian needs to read and practice. For a limited time, Crosstalk is making one copy of the Gossip booklet available for a donation of $4, or you may obtain 3 copies for a donation of $10, or 5 copies for a donation of $15. To obtain your copies, call 1-800-729-9829. Ask for the booklet on gossip. That's 1-800-729-9829.
And welcome back to Crosstalk, and the lines are jammed, by the way. Just a final word here on the 20-page booklet with the violent verses from the Quran. If you're interested, it would be a wise idea to contact our offices today. We have other items that are going to be on the agenda, and this will probably be one of the last days we'll be talking about this, unless there's a greater need. But if you're interested in any copies of that, either 1, 3, or 5, contact the office here at 800-729-9829, and they'll be glad to fill that order. Again, they're 20-page booklet, 8.5 by 5.5 pages, and they're filled with verses bespeaking violence or anger or judgment, literally, against anyone who is not of Islamic background or does not recognize Allah as the only God. So call that number, 800-729-9829, and order your copies and distribute them. Give them to other friends if you can. They might understand, again, what is all involved in the religion of peace. We're now going to go to the phones. We've got a lot of things to talk about today. We're going to Ironwood, Michigan, and talk with John. John, you're on the air.
Hello.
Yes,
I was
sir.
wondering, I get so tired of people saying, well, I haven't done anything wrong. I have nothing to fear, if they want to spy on me. But then again, it seems to me that there were 6 million Jews in Germany who did nothing wrong and had nothing to fear. And what happened to them? Same goes with Stalin and Mao and the millions that they got rid of. They did nothing wrong and they had nothing to fear.
And there are people who say, well, because I am of one religious background or another, and I'm not here upholding any false doctrine or anything like that, but in the culture in which we live, we do have freedom to worship as we please. And as I worship the Lord Jesus Christ, and my faith and trust in Christ crucified, Christ coming again, there's no question. But because we have that liberty, I mean, we see what's happening in Islamic countries, where we have a pastor being threatened with hanging because he converted from Islam to Christianity. So we have that privilege. But may I say this, the liberties that we're losing by some of these bizarre things that are coming through high levels of government, there had to be an approval in order to get these ray machines out there, the drones overhead. The big question is, our president utilized drones to shoot and kill a U.S. citizen that was, yes, he was a terrorist. He was in another country, but he utilized the tool. And the question, considering he was a citizen, is it appropriate to use that same law on citizens here? Big questions.
Yes, for sure.
Well, John, thanks for your call. Appreciate that very much. Sue in Hermiston, Oregon, our telephone number 800-733-9829. Got some vacant lines here if you'd like to call. Sue, you're on the air.
Hi, thank you. Sounds like black ops is becoming legal, but what I was really calling to say is that with these ray guns, we all understand what's happening down in Mexico and on our borders. The drug cartel will do everything they can, money, people, whatever. They're going to get their hands on one of those guns, and then they'll be what they think is the kingpin. And I don't think they'll care who they use it on. You ask any Mexican nationals, they'll tell you they have no heart.
Well, the issue here, of course, we're talking about a weapon that is high powered. It mounts on a truck. It has the capability of zeroing in on somebody a third of a mile away, and rendering them helpless. Now, the question, of course, you pick out one person at a time or a small group at a time. But the issue here now, if it is considered offensive, bear in mind what's going on in Afghanistan. People dying and rioting in the streets. But if it's offensive to take those machines over to Afghanistan because they might be offended and call it torture, yet it's okay to bring them to the United States and put them in prisons, and then it's not torture.
Well, what I don't understand is I have heard you explain clearly that it causes injury. We don't know the extent of that injury. I could get a burn like that in 2 days, be dead from sepsemia.
Well, then the issue here, again, the operator, again, they said if you come back, there's no device to negate the capability of going back to the same person. Because if they get a second dose and a third dose, it can have serious impact.
Yeah.
Well, again, the question, the philosophy of why we are having our liberties literally peeling away like the layers of an onion. What are we going to have left soon? I mean, now, according to this law, and shockingly, it was backed. I had a list of all of the Congress people that signed this. And it would shock you. I mean, there were people, yes, Michelle Bachmann and others. They all signed it, 300 and some Congress people, and the majority of them were conservatives.
These people don't understand. Hitler would have loved them. He went into office legally. He used legal laws to shut down Germany, and then it was finished. And that's what's happening to us now, today, Pastor.
Thank you so much for your call, Sue, from Hermiston, Oregon. We go to Twin Falls, Idaho. And Patty, you're on the air.
Yes. It seems to me like the people that we voted into office to help us are now our enemies. They don't seem to care about what we want or how we want them to vote. They have their minds made up, and they do as they please. And I wish that there could be a grassroots effort to remove term limits, and we could vote these people out of office.
Well, the term limit is that which makes sure they can't have more than 2 terms. But you remove term limits, they're in there for life.
Well, we need to stick to 2 terms, and that's it. And if they can't get done what we need them to do in 2 terms, they're out. But whether they work for us or not, they're out. They can't make a career of it. They get so complacent, and they get so struck by all the benefits and the money that they're making, that they make a career of it.
Thank you, Patty, from Twin Falls, Idaho. Appreciate that very much. Got to move along. We have Menominee Falls. Cora is online. Hi, Cora.
Hi. I just wanted to say that, a few things. As they're doing this, we are just one vote away from having the worst despots as our president. Governors were being ruled by groups of governors, and you can listen to the program earlier this week, by precedent. It doesn't matter what the Constitution says. It's precedent. We're being ruled by the president's bureaucracy, so there are no checks and balances. There's no one to vote for in the bureaucracy. And I'm going to give you an example. We had a Hungarian friend, a very college student, and they were voting, and she said, "Oh, yes, all the young people are voting for this person." And this person is so honest, and they're going to change everything, and they're really for the young people, and they're going to have the most reformed group ruling the country ever. And this turned out to be the worst despot since communism.
Well, you know, Cora, one of the things that we have to recognize is that there are people, instead of thinking for themselves, are being informed. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. People who make decisions not based on wisdom. See, the ability to choose and say A or B, every one of us can choose. In fact, would you believe even to some degrees an animal can choose? The power of choice is not the ultimate thing. It's to make the choice based on truth and value.
It's true. And I call these people of all ages twitiots. And you can figure what a twittiot is. It's someone who the preponderance of their friends on social media tell them to vote for so-and-so, that's who they vote for.
Kind of herd mentality. Thank you, Cora. Appreciate your comments. Got to move right ahead. Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Adrian on line 3. Hi, Adrian. How are you?
Kind of herd mentality. Thank you.
Okay, Adrian, we can't have you playing the radio, and so I'm sorry. I'm going to have to let you go. You can't, when they tell you to turn the radio down, it means turn it down, okay? Let's go to Art in La Harpe, Illinois.
Yes.
Yes, you're on the air, Art.
Okay. One of the first thought that came to my mind is that since I have heart problems and I have a pacemaker defibrillator, and my cardiologist said not to be too close to a radio-controlled device for controlling airplanes or race cars or anything like that. And I'm wondering what that would do to my pacemaker.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I am aware we've had engineers who worked on our television transmitter some years ago, and one of them had a pacemaker, and he felt he could feel the response from the electronics causing his pacemaker to change its speed as well. So this can be, again, we're talking about a weapon here, and apparently people with heart trouble would not be considered.
Yeah, well, they would be aiming at probably only be used to control a crowd, and if you happen to be in that crowd, right? I have had I was in a Walmart store one time and standing close to the detector to detect anyone making off with any of their equipment.
Sure, those posts by the door.
And I could feel it affecting me.
Good question, my friend. Stay away from them. I appreciate your call. Thank you, Art. Appreciate the call. Folks, I don't know about you, but again, I'm for law enforcement. I'm for all these things. But if we're going to be having drones flying 400 feet over our heads, that's legal now. As a pilot, I don't know if I want to be flying at an airport and suddenly I'm on takeoff and getting up to airspeed and about to lift off, and a drone crosses in front and gets knocked to smithereens by my propeller. I mean, I've hit a few birds in my life with the propeller, and it's not much left of the bird. Propeller did fine. But may I say that the hazards to aircraft, we're talking about drones of several pounds. It can destroy aircraft if ingested into a jet engine. All kinds of things we could talk about. But have we not become a little bit too far in the issue of the right to congregate, now illegal by this new legislation that has been approved? Go to our website, if you would, and we'll have links that will show you where you can find out more information on this issue, of course, of the vast majority of House votes to criminalize protest. And that is called H.R. 347. Go to Google and check it out, and you can read exactly what it says. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
For the Worldview Week in Minute, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewweekend.com. As I study Romans chapter 1, looking at the things that occur to a nation that reject God over and over, I see Romans 1, verse 22. Professing to be wise, they become fools. This literally means to become vain or useless or futile in their thinking. And in fact, when they become vain, useless, or futile in their thinking, that actually opens them up to the next consequence for rejecting God, which is found in Romans 1:25. They worshiped and served created things rather than the Creator who's blessed forevermore. In other words, they become vain, useless, and futile in their thinking to the point that they then embrace pagan spirituality, the worship of nature. Indeed, we see pagan spirituality doubling in America every 18 months, according to the June 2008 Denver Post. May we preach the gospel so that people can understand what's happening to our nation and realize that the only solution is individual repentance and faith in Jesus Christ. For the Worldview Week in Minute, I'm Brandon House.
And welcome back to Crosstalk, talking about technology today. And could it be the abuse of technology? Are we losing our rights to assemble and to protest if necessary? And I'm not an advocate of all kinds of wild protests like this business of Occupy. I mean, I occupy a studio every day. Means I move into it for a short period of time. But when we're talking about what's going on here and the technology that is involved, we were talking about the drones that have been flying over Afghanistan and Iraq, and the issues, of course, that they are able literally to use them to take out an individual or a car because they are weapons equipped, the drones. Now, the planned extension, extending the law enforcement vehicles, though, we're talking about police seeing several advantages to drones over other surveillance because the pilotless craft cost less, are cheaper to operate, and can remain airborne longer. They can be used as crime-fighting tools to patrol the skies. Authorities can monitor traffic. There you go. They can search small areas for missing persons or watch criminal suspects. Could those criminal suspects also be members of society that may be considered criminal because of their faith? Questions. But then the police can watch a rally of people silently from 30,000 feet overhead, can bring into focus the details, license numbers from 30,000 feet in the air. Now, it's alarming, the escalating use of including weapons. Drone builders are researching the use of non-lethal weapons such as tear gas or tasers, stun guns fired from a drone, and lethal weaponry can be easily the next step on the slippery slope. Now, the drones will add to the erosion of privacy that's come, and with the cameras and global positioning system, well, I was talking to a businessman here some years ago, and he said, oh, yeah, and he pulled out his cell phone, pushed a couple buttons. Oh, yeah, my son is now, and he's watching his son's location on his way to college on his cell phone, which told him by GPS where he was at that moment. Well, technology is amazing, and I'm sure it has its blessings. But what controls all this potential from becoming corrupt and used in a wicked manner? Well, legislation is important, and as I mentioned, H.R. 347. Check it out. You can go to that'smycongress.com, that'smycongress.com, and it talks about this and other issues. But as you're looking at what's happening in our world, does it not again remind us of the importance of the Lord's coming? Got a couple more calls very quickly. Let's go to Doug in Ringgold, Georgia. And Doug, you are on the air.
Yes, I mean, that right to protest, that's one of the beauties of living in this country. Now, this mess has got to stop somewhere about this, like this HR number you're talking about. Now, these occupier bunch get up and do thousands of dollars worth of damage on the courthouse lawn. Now, I'm not for that, but this other stuff, if it's not stopped, we'll be like the Soviet Union, somewhere like that.
Well, this is if you interrupt the president in a speech, or if you do anything that would disrupt the orderly conduct of government business, then you're in trouble, and you could go to prison for a year. So you don't raise your voice too loud as the president goes by on his business.
Well, that protest can be good because the president, he's up there all by himself. He may not really know what's going on, or might need to know how the people really feel.
Points of concern, my friend. Thank you so much for calling.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate the call. Let's go to Steve in Florida, our last caller. Steve, you're on the air.
Thank you, Vic. U.S. drones have killed dozens of folks in Afghanistan and Pakistan recently, and just 2 days ago I heard 64 innocent family members were killed in Yemen by a U.S. drone. I wonder, it doesn't matter to Americans because those people over there mean nothing to us, but I wonder if it'll start meaning something to us when we have hundreds of drones in our own skies and they start killing people in upscale neighborhoods of Dallas or Houston or San Francisco.
It's serious stuff, Steve.
Yes.
And as we see the liberty, and again, the amazing decision made in Congress, H.R. 347.
Yes.
If you've seen it, have you seen it yet?
I have. I got it from Joyce Riley.
Well, if you folks listening, just go to Google, bring up Google and type in H.R. 347. And you'll find out that this new, I guess they call it the Federal Restricted Buildings and Grounds Improvement Act. Sounds like they want to plant more grass, doesn't it?
More evisceration of our constitutional rights.
Well, folks, I want to thank you. Thank you so much, Steve, for calling. I know you monitor things and appreciate your call. I want to thank all of you for sharing again with your thoughts. Today's kind of a fractured program with all these different issues, but sometimes we need to be aware of them. Also, again, a final reminder on the booklet on Islam, covering all the verses on hate and killing and violence that are there. If you'd like a copy of that, contact our office. You can get them singly or in quantity, and there's a discount getting in quantity. But you call Mary at the switchboard, and this will be the last day we'll be pressing heavily on this, so please be aware, and we need to know how many more to print. So if you would, pick up your phone and call. Our phone number here is 800-733-9829. And Mary or one of the other staff will take your order. It's called the Verses on Violence in the Quran. And it's self-explanatory. It talks about even beheading. It talks about the cutting off of hands and arms and legs, as well as other means of discipline that's found within the Sharia law. And, of course, we share that with you as information, educational material, and I urge you to look further into this. Again, the city of Brookfield at this moment in Brookfield, Wisconsin, is dealing with the issue, and we hope that many will be responding in Brookfield as well. Thanks for joining us today on Crosstalk.
Listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. Or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.